It says, read Daniel 11, 2 to 35. The conflict between Persia and Greece is described in 11, 2 to 4. Based on your previous studies in Daniel, what names and events can you match with these predictions? Okay, so this conflict between the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece, these are literal kings, but also, as I was telling you, there are also principalities and the powers, the demons who are responsible for this, for these kingdoms. And so we look at it from a spiritual point, not from the regular point. So, what do you think? What do you think we need to do to stay? You know, when there's a conflict like this, what does it teach you from what we what we studied last time? And what can we do to stay to overcome this? Could you, based on last study, when you know that as you pray, there's a conflict going on in the principalities, and so there's a, as you pray from Canada, there are demons here who, and Angel Gabriel and Michael will be fighting to make to answer your prayers. So what you see in Daniel is true of today too. Huh? Don't think that is prophecy and that's finished. It's very pertinent of what happens today in prayer as you pray. So what can you do as you pray so that Michael and Gabriel will keep winning? Persistent prayer. So any what else? I mean, the New Testament does give you a lot of material to tell you what to do when you have to pray.
One of the things we talked about last time was praying for praying against the demonic forces that are like influencing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's to be specific with the prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So I've just listed down 4 points. I was just wondering if you guys have got any more we can do.
Fasting also you said, no? Persistent fasting.
Yeah. Fasting does give you. It sharpens your. It's just like a blunt knife and a sharpened knife. You know, with a blunt knife, fasting actually sharpens your. You can go through those forces with a sharpened knife. That's what fasting does. Okay, so one of the first things you have to do is stay alert. Remember that there is, as much as God is real, the enemies of God are real too. And, you know, as I told you, it's not from flesh and blood, but against things that you don't see. And so we need to stay alert. So if you just take, someone can read Ephesians 4:27, and someone can read 1 Peter 5:8. Those verses tell you about that. Ephesians 4:27 and 1 Peter 5:8.
First Peter, I read that. 1 Peter 5:8. Be serious, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour.
So that's the truth. And can you read Ephesians 4:27?
27. And do not give the devil an opportunity.
Sorry?
Can you repeat those verses? Ephesians, what is it? Ephesians?
Ephesians 4:27
And
1 Peter 5:8.
1 Peter 5:8. Okay.
Yeah, 27.
27. Do not give the devil an opportunity.
Yeah. So we need to realize that.
Yes. But how? That is the thing.
Yeah. So we have to be. So when we pray, you realize. Have you wondered why your mind goes all over the place when you start praying? I face that problem. I pray and then all the things that have not happened comes into your mind, and then you realize what you're actually praying for. It's a very, very common tact of the enemy. That's why it says stay alert. Because a lot of times our mind just goes all over the place, especially when we start praying, or you fall asleep, or something happens, and then your prayer is interrupted. And that is one of the key things. So that's why Peter says, or or Paul says, is that, we don't give a foothold to the enemy. And this is how we give foothold to the enemy. Or at that time, the phone will ring, or some message will come. That's why they say don't use an online Bible, because when you're watching that, some message will come and then you'll turn back. So it's good to look at this Bible. So we have to stay alert. That's one of the key things, especially when you're praying. Remember, we have to be concentrated towards praying. And so again, it says the enemy is like a roaring lion. Jesus is not on the line of Judah. Okay, so he comes like a lion and a roaring lion. So it's not that he will come and devour you. He just frightens you like a roaring lion. So that he will keep roaring, but you need to keep alert and continue praying. And that's how we can do. So stay alert. Second one, we have to stand in God's strength. We don't fight these principalities and powers with our own strength. Don't think we can do it. Always rely on God's power. And that's, if you read Ephesians 6:10 and Jude verse 9.
Ephesians 6:10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might.
Yeah, and Jude 9.
But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not dare to bring a slanderous accusation against him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you."
Yeah. So you don't fight the devil with your strength, saying that, I have got the strength with me. Only the Lord's power you can fight the devil. And so we need to realize that it's only by God's strength and power. And the third thing that is what I was talking in the beginning. You have to take captive every thought that comes, and that's in 2 Corinthians 10:5. 2 Corinthians 10:5. Can someone read it?
2 Corinthians 10:5.
Yeah.
We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
So that's something we need to very seriously do. Every time you come to pray, every thought you make it obedient to Christ. Every thought that comes, you can say, Lord, I make that thought obedient to you, and continue praying. Okay, and lastly, it says always pray. We need to realize that we need to be always praying, not just. It's good to spend some time in the morning or evening to pray, but right through the day, remember these things are always. So whenever you get a time, you don't have to kneel and pray. You can, but as you're walking, as you're driving, you can always pray and say, Lord, I can, something that God brings to your mind, you can pray. Yeah. Ephesians 6:18, can you read that?
And pray in the Spirit in all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people.
You have to pray always. And that's the only way that you can keep defeating things that come against you always. Temptations, anything that, if you are in an attitude of prayer, these things won't attack. And so it's a good thing to. So I always tell people, prayer is the backbone of a Christian life. We have to be praying people. As I tell myself, I tell people around, just morning and evening prayer is not enough. We should be always praying. And when I say praying, I'm not saying, You can do it in your mind. You can keep praying. That's why Paul also says pray without ceasing. And so, yeah, talk to God. God will talk back to you. He will give you thoughts. He'll give you people to pray for. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you get the thought of someone? If you think of someone, just pray for that person. You never know what that person is going through. And God actually brings it to your mind. Pray for it. Has it happened? Doesn't it happen? You suddenly think of someone or you dream of someone. Just pray for that person. And that's why it says pray for all of the Lord's people. You never know what they're going through. They may not even tell you, but there is a fight going on for that person. Your prayer can make that fight. Will God's angels will get victory when you pray. So maybe that person is not in a state to pray or is weak. So say maybe that's why God brought it to your attention. So do that. Okay. Any questions on prayer? And I kept January 7 basically for
You
that.
said 4 things. Did you only 3, 4?
Stay alert, stand in God's power, take captive every thought,
Take care.
and always pray.
These are all the things.
Okay. So let's go start reading. So now this chapter 11 is about when it was revealed, when Michael revealed this to Daniel, it was prophecy. But today we know all of this happened. So today for us this is history. But to Daniel it was prophecy, and that was so exact. Whatever he revealed to Daniel was exact. Now she came up with a good question. Do you think that this was written after all this took place? But I believe that the Holy Spirit would have given it to them. Now I don't know if it was written after or before, but this is the Old Testament, so I'm sure a lot of this would have been written then. Yeah. And another thing about chapter 11 is even as Sheila was saying, a lot of what happens here, there is a double fulfillment of prophecy. That means it happened in those times, and the same thing could happen in the near future too. And I'll come to that. In fact, one of a clear indication of that is Matthew 2:15. Can you read that, and I'll tell you what it says. And someone take Hosea chapter 11 verse 1.
Matthew 2:15.
Yeah.
He remained there until the death of the Lord. This was to fulfill what has been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son.
Okay, so that's a prophecy about Jesus coming out, going into Egypt. Can you read Hosea 1:11? Hosea 1:11.
The people of Judah and the people of Israel will be reunited. And they will appoint one leader and will come up out of the land. For great will be the day of real.
Which version is that? NIV?
Yes, sir.
NIV.
And yes, we also said.
Okay. So that is when Hosea prophesied, he actually prophesied of Israel coming out of Egypt. Okay. And that got fulfilled. But it is also about God's son, Jesus going to Egypt, coming out of Egypt from that. So it's a double fulfillment of prophecy. So those days it happened to Israel as God's own. Israel is also known as God's child. Yeah. And actually, it also happened with Jesus. So that is what we call about double fulfillment of prophecy. And so as you read this, you'll find there is a double fulfillment of prophecy. That means something that you see here could happen in the future too. Okay. Now I'm going to read this chapter 11 from the Good News translation because it's a little more clearer. When it says kings of north and south, here it says it's Syria and Egypt. So you can understand it a little more. Okay. So I'll go through this, actually question 8. I'll just go through that. We can answer some of those questions. We'll go through that. So Daniel says he's, Daniel 11, it says he is responsible for helping and defending me. But what I'm going to tell you now is true. This is Michael telling Daniel. The angel said 3 more kings will rule over Persia, followed by a fourth who will be richer than all the others. At the height of his power and wealth, he will challenge the kingdom of Greece. And then a heroic king will appear and he will rule over the huge empire and do whatever he wants. So now you know this is what happened. So out of the 4 kings of Persia, Xerxes was the most powerful and most richest. That is the 4th king. And then came Alexander the Great. Out of Greece came Alexander the Great. And then that's what it says in verse 3. Then a heroic king will appear and he will rule over the whole empire. So Alexander the Great ruled over most of the world. Yeah. But the height of his power, his empire will break and be divided into 4 parts. And that's exactly what happened. He, at the age of 32, died. Even though he had a son, his 4 generals took over all of his kingdoms. We talked about this in the beginning of Daniel. Yeah. And divided into 4 parts, kings not descended from him will rule in his place. And that's exactly what happened. It was not his generals who took over, not his own son. But they will not have power that he had. Very true. He was so much more powerful, but none of them had. So one of the generals was the king of Egypt will be strong, and one of his generals, however, will be stronger and rule a greater kingdom. After a number of years, the king of Egypt will make an alliance with the king of Syria, and that's okay. So Egypt is south of Israel, and Syria is the north of Israel. So in the Old Testament, Israel was actually called the center of the earth. So anything, that was this reference point. Israel was the reference point. So anything north of that was north of, so that was north. So he's talking basically of Egypt and Syria. All your versions will say king of north and king of south. Okay, so that's why so this new Good News translation gives it as king of Egypt. So the Syrian kings, they were all named under the name of Antiochus. Antiochus first, Antiochus second. All those were the Syrian kings, and the Egyptian kings were called Ptolemies. The Egyptians were called. So it was Ptolemy the first, Ptolemy. There are different Ptolemies, like the pharaohs when the Israelites. So they were called the Ptolemies. Okay, so that's it. So the king of Egypt will be strong, and one of his generals, however, will be stronger and rule a greater kingdom. After a number of years, the king of Egypt will make an alliance with the king of Syria and give his daughter in marriage. And that's exactly what happened. One of the Antiochus marries the king of Egypt, his daughter. But the alliance will not last, and she and her husband, her child, and the servants who went with her will be killed. And that's exactly what happened. The first wife of the king of Antiochus actually kills the second wife and everyone there. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, the epoch, the Catholic Bible has got different other books, like the Maccabees. In fact, all of this is recorded in Maccabees as things. So the book of Maccabees, actually, a lot of this, Maccabees were a Maccabean brothers from Israel who stood against all of these kings. And in fact, if you read the book of Maccabees, all of this is listed there as history. Yeah, but the Protestant church, not only the Catholic church, looks at the apocryphal books. We don't have those books. For some reason, the synod didn't take these books in. There could have been some reasons, but at the end of the day, all of it is God's word. Okay. Okay. Soon after, one of her relatives will become the king, and he will attack the army of Syria. So, and that's true. One of these, the Egyptian king, her brother becomes the king of Egypt, and he will go and attack Syria for what the Syrian king did. I mean, in the sense, because of they killed his sister, and so that's exactly what happens. And he will carry back to Egypt the images of gods and articles of gold, silver dedicated to the gods. After several years of peace, the king of Syria will invade Egypt, but it will be forced to retreat. So you will find these wars going on between Syria and Egypt. And those days there were no flight, there was no thing. They have to go through Israel. So why this is being recorded is because Israel is involved. And these wars, in fact, if you go through 11, Daniel 11, apparently about 22 wars have been listed. So there was always these tensions going on between Egypt and Syria, and this was all happening, between 330 BC and 165 years before Jesus came. Okay, now his first coming had these things happening. Do you find this happening now? Before his second coming, also this will happen. There will be these wars, and Israel will be the center of all that is happening, and that is why all this is important for us, and that's why it was revealed to Daniel, because it is a double fulfillment of prophecy. What happened before is going to happen again, and you can already see it is happening. Egypt, Syria, all of these people will be in conflict with each other, and the Middle East is going to be an area where finally, when Christ comes back, there will be these things happen. Okay, so let me just continue reading. After several years of peace, the king of Syria will invade Egypt, but be forced to retreat. Again, the sons of the kings of Syria will prepare for war and gather a large army. One of them will sweep in like a flood and attack the enemy fortress. In his anger, the king of Egypt will go to war against the king of Syria and capture his huge army, and he will be proud of his victory, and many of his soldiers will be killed, but he will not continue to be victorious. Yeah. And then the king of Syria will go back, gather a larger army than he had before. When the proper time comes, he will return with a large, well-equipped army. And then many people will rebel against the king of Egypt, and some violent people from your nation, Daniel, will also rebel in the vision, because of a vision they have seen, and they will be defeated. So he's saying that when this happens, some of the people of Israel also will join these kings, because they're going in between this land, and so they will some of the people will rebel against their own God and join these people. So he's telling all these things happened. You will find that's why these Maccabean brothers, a lot of the Jews actually they actually go in alliance with these people, and they go against the God of Israel.
Maccabees is the name of the place or
It
the
is
tribe?
their tribe. They're a Maccabean brothers.
Oh.
They are the ones who wrote that book. So actually, they are the people who actually stood against and said, "We will not submit to." Especially when we go further down, there's one. There was one of the most evilest. His name is given here. Antiochus Epiphanes.
Antiochus
Epiphanes.
Yes.
He's like the Antichrist, and
Yes,
that's why.
they're related to an Antichrist.
Yeah. So even though what he did will also happen in the coming days, and when you
Yes.
read Revelation, we'll see that. So that's what. Any question?
Which is the festival that they celebrated the victory that comes close to Christmas?
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. Is it Hanukkah?
No, what?
The Israelites celebrate Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Israelite.
No.
Is that the victory over?
No.
No. It's either plural, then it may be plural.
Purim is
Esther. Esther.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that question, so no. Yeah. Then he will be followed by another king and will send an officer to oppress the people with taxes in order to increase the wealth of the kingdom. And in a short time, that king will be killed, not publicly and not in battle. And that's true. This king in this Antiochus that was killed before Antiochus Epiphanes came on the line was he will be killed by his people only, not by due to war. It was kind of assassination, and then this instead of his son Antiochus Epiphanes comes into power, and he actually divides this whole plan. So all of that is true. Okay, so now 21 onwards is this what this is about? Antiochus Epiphanes. The angel went on to explain the next king of Syria will be an evil man who has no right to be king, and that's exactly what happened. He was not in line of the kingship, but he was only his brother. But
Which version are you reading?
the Good News version, Good News translation. Yeah, I found that this was actually giving a much better, because it's history.
Yeah.
A lot of this you don't understand, but when it's related very, with this version, everything is simpler.
For wedding, the church gave us the good news.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
So is this what is the same thing? Good,
Yeah.
that's nice.
I have it at home.
Okay, which was okay, 21. Anyone who opposes him, even God's high priest, will be swept away and wiped out. Making treaties, he will deceive other nations, and he will grow stronger and stronger, even though he rules only a small nation. He will invade a wealthy province without warning and will do things none of his ancestors ever did. He will divide among his followers the goods and property he has captured in war. He will make plans to attack fortresses, but his time will soon run out. So this is as you read this is what happens in the end times when the Antichrist comes. He will actually make alliance with people by giving them goods. So his popularity will increase because he gives people gifts so that they can be followed, and then he will go on conquering other places. And so his intention is evil, but he does it with a very sly motive, that is to gain popularity and rule the world. And that's exactly what the Antichrist will do. As you go to Revelation, you'll know the first 3 years he will come with peace. He will try to bring peace, and then he'll take. Then things change after 3.5 years. Okay. 25. He will boldly raise an army to attack the king of Egypt, who will prepare to fight back with a huge and powerful army. But the king of Egypt will be deceived and will not be successful. His closest advisors will ruin him. Many of his soldiers will be killed, and his army will be wiped out. Then two kings will sit down. And eat at the same table, but their motives will be evil. Now, this is where the conference between two peace treaties started. So people will sit at a conference table, but their mind is totally evil. In the sense they have their own agenda to come through. Peace is not the no one is bothered about the other person's peace. They're bothered only of themselves, and that's what you'll see today. All these peace treaties or people who they only bother about their country. They're not bothered about actually the other person. And this is where it started. And so you'll find that happening now. They will come to a table to come to peace, but with evil things in their mind. Yeah. They will lie to each other. They will not get what they want because the time for it has not yet come. And the king of Syria will return home with all the loot he has captured and determined to destroy the religion of God's people, and he will do as he pleases. Later on, he will invade Egypt again, but this time it will turn out differently. And it's all talking of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, a lot of Daniel, the 11 is spent on this guy because of the fact that he's like a Antichrist. He's a type of Antichrist in those days. And whatever you read here is exactly what's going to happen as you read Revelation, you know, that the Antichrist will also have these kind of qualities. Okay? So he will turn back and try to destroy the region of God's people, and he will follow the advice of those who have abandoned the religion. So he takes advice of the people of the Jews who actually abandoned their religion, and takes advice of them to carry out his evil plans. And so there is a lot of God's people who will actually go over to the Antichrist side, and you will find that in the last days too. A lot of people who profess to be Christians, they will actually say that they will forgo their religion over Christ, and they will say the Antichrist is the one, because everything is happening, good things are happening to them specifically. And you will find that in Revelation, that even after that, people never gave their lives to the Lord, even though through the tribulation. So, a lot of people say that, it's just the mind of man. It has nothing to do with, it's just, even though God comes there and rules, there will be still people who will not give their life to the Lord. Okay? So, so he will turn back in rage and try to destroy the God's people, and this is exactly what happens to the Antichrist. He will go to Israel, and he will try to destroy the religion of God's people, and he will follow the advice of those who abandoned that religion. Some of his soldiers will take the temple ritually unclean, and will stop the daily sacrifices and set up the awful order. This is what Jesus talks about, the abomination of desolation. What actually happened with Antiochus Epiphanes is that he actually took a pig and sacrificed a pig in the temple. That was totally desecrated, because a pig is something that, according to them, is not. And so that's what exactly he does. And you'll find the Antichrist also will do exactly the same thing. He'll desecrate the third temple when it's built. Yeah.
He also put a Greek god there.
Yeah, Jupiter. And
Zeus.
Zeus.
is it Zeus?
Jupiter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jupiter. Zeus is Jupiter.
Yeah. So, and actually what happens in Revelation is Antichrist will have his own statue in the temple. And so, very similar to what's happening, you'll find the same thing. And so this is how he will gain and he will tell some of his people, you can start eating pork, and they'll actually, small things, they will not be faithful in small things. They'll start eating what God had told them not to eat. And, you compromise in small things, and that's how it starts. When you start compromising in small things, that's why Jesus said, he is faithful with little things, he'll be faithful with much. So it's these small foxes that we need to overcome. It's not the large things. It's small things that we compromise will actually bring us closer to a destruction. And we need to be very careful with these small things that we think, it doesn't matter. We can give it, no one's going to see it, or no one's going to, these things don't matter. And so that's how it starts. And then, you will be along. So that's what Antiochus Epiphanes does. And that is exactly what the Antichrist will do. Okay. So I'm reading all this just to explain that part of it. Yeah, some of his soldiers will take the temple ritually and will stop daily sacrifices. By deceit, the king will win the support of those who have already abandoned their religion. But those who follow God will fight back. And this is what we are talking about. There are people, Maccabees is one of the people who fought back. They're called the Maccabean brothers. And they're the one who wrote that book. And it says, wise leaders of the people will share their wisdom with many others. So in the end, in those days, the Maccabean brothers used to go and share what God has told, so that people will realize that they're doing something wrong. And so that could be something that you and me can do. If you know what the truth is, we better share the truth. Don't keep quiet. When you see something that's going wrong, which is taking God's and doing things that are not right according to the word, it's good to tell them. Or you don't have to go and fight with them, but you can tell them this is what the Bible says. Maybe someone will listen and turn their way. So that's what it says. Yeah, wise leaders of the people will share their wisdom with many others, but while some of them will be killed in battle or be burned to death, some will be robbed and made prisoners. And definitely this is going to happen. We will be persecuted for standing for truth. And you'll find that happening. Even in these days, we have no problem in this country right or as of now, but soon it'll be a time when we'll be persecuted standing for the truth. And so in such times, people will give up their truth and they don't want to go through the difficult times. And so that's what happened those days. The Maccabean brothers were killed actually because they stood for truth. Yeah, and some of these wise leaders will be killed, but as the result of this, the people will be purified. When persecution comes, you'll actually find purer people coming out of the church, because that's why God allows persecution. And in fact, when you go through Revelation, the persecuted church was a church in Smyrna, and God had no rebuke for that church, because who will want to join a persecuted church? Who will want to be killed? If you want to join a persecuted church, then no problem. We will like to go to a church where there's no problem. Yeah, where there's no persecution. So that's what it says, that these people will be purified, and this will continue until the end comes and the time God has set. And so the king of Syria will do as he pleases. He will boast that he is greater than any god, superior than the supreme God, and he will be able to do this until the time when God punishes him, and God will do exactly what he has planned. So you remember the first. What is the first sin? Is it of Adam or was it Lucifer? It was Lucifer, because Lucifer was created before that. What was the first sin?
Want to be like God.
Yes. And the Antichrist will be exactly that. He will try to, he wants to be above God. And that is the greatest mistake, that we may not say that we want to be again above God, but we think a lot of times that we can figure out our life much better than God can figure it, right? Because we have control. We think our jobs, our money can figure out a lot more things than what God can figure out. So in a way, it is pride that brings about that. Pride that we can do it with our own strength. And that pride comes in very, very subtly in our lives. We don't realize it. And that is why God says that he opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Because God can't work in proud people. God cannot be, and Satan's very happy with people who are proud. Pride may not come out with, it can be an ego issue. It can, a lot of people have this false humility, which is also a kind of pride. A lot of people talk about saying, I'm no one, I'm just a worm. Actually, in their heart, they want people to exalt them. That's why they're saying. Have you realized it? People who actually talk like that, you don't have to talk. You can just humble yourself and walk. You don't have to say that I am a worm and I'm that and I'm this, I'm unworthy. You've seen people praying like that? You don't have to. All you can do is, yes, we are unworthy, we know that. But you don't have to go and telling people about. So it's a very subtle thing. Pride can get in very, very easily. You don't know how. We need to be careful. And only God's word will actually, that's why God's word is like a mirror. It'll tell you what we are doing wrong. And so I think we'll stop with this so that we can actually complete the next chapter like that. Okay, let me just finish this question. So I just read through this 36 is because it talks about the Antichrist, and the Antiochus Epiphanes talks about that. Yeah. So let me do question 10. all of chapters 11 was a future to Daniel. However, the 11 to 35 are past to us. Looking back, we can see how precisely God's plans come through, and God is really in control. How can God's absolute authority and rule over history help us to stand firm when evil seems to triumph? Have you thought of it? When you see things being unfair and evil triumphing, do you still believe God is in control?
Yes.
But a lot of times our actions say that I don't think God is in control. And we always have doubts. Yeah. But the fact is that God allows it for a particular time, and there will be judgment coming. And so, have you ever got questions like that? But when evil things happen, is God really in control? Has those thoughts gone through your mind? I don't know. I'm just asking you.
At times it's confusing. Why does he allow it to happen? But then, reading this book of Daniel, you're convinced that he is in control. He is sovereign over everything that happens here.
Yeah, God is sovereign. That's something we need to realize. Each time we go through a difficult time, and it can be any kind of difficulty, health, money, I don't know, whatever it is, children. For some reason, God allowed it. I don't know. We don't know why, but we can turn things, God can turn things around for our good if we submit to Him. Let's not look in the past as to why it happened. Let's look forward and say, Lord, as we submit these things to you, you can make something beautiful out of the situation. I don't know how, but I'm willing to trust you because you are still in control. With all the Canada tariffs, believes that still God is still in control. Yes, He is. I don't know. There's a looming economic problem that's coming up. Just last week, 2 of the companies that I deal with were closing down because of the tariffs.
Completely.
They're pausing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah. These tariffs. Now he's put 25% on steel. That means the people in America will pay more for Canadian steel, right?
But a lot of us, we can't be selling there.
Oh, we can't be selling.
Because it will be very high.
They may not buy it. What are we going to do with this stuff?
So most of what is manufactured here goes to Canada.
Correct.
It goes to US. So they'll buy it from the US.
So US also produces steel.
That's what he wants. No? He wants to get America first.
So that's what in India also
Again,
used to do, no?
Yeah. Again, God is in control. Why He's allowed it, I don't know. But we can pray.
Maybe it's all these prophecies coming true.
That's what I said. But here's something we can pray, and God, I think it's here that He says this. Let me just see. He says He will help people. Maybe it's in the next.
It's really amazing when you think about that everything is foretold. This is going to come. So,
Yeah, it says somewhere here that God will send help to people whenever they're in problem. And even when we do a revelation, you will see God's people are actually protected. So even as we go through what we're going through now, how many of us actually can get down on our knees and pray and say, Lord, I don't know what's happening, but I know that you will take care of whatever situations we go through. And that's exactly what we as God's people should be doing, saying, God, intervene in these situations. All these things are happening and nothing, if Christians are not praying, then God's will is not being done. And so that is why we need to pray for our leaders. Not that we talk bad against them. We don't know why God put them in place, why these things are taking place. But we can pray and say, Lord, if there's some agenda of the evil one in this, Lord, come against it. And just like Daniel was praying, even though the people had gone, he was actually fasting and praying for those people who had gone. He was not there with them. And because of his prayer, the temple was built. So we can do the same thing. We can pray, seek the Lord and say, Lord, I don't know what is happening, but I'm going to trust you. So let's get on our knees and pray, ceasing, unceasing. Maybe it's for a time like this that God is telling us to get into situations and pray, so that there is a fight going on in the heavenly places, and our prayers is going to change situations.
And as we think about it, when you talk about the protection may not be just to keep us away from the earthly dangers, right?
Yeah.
Protection is more like the ultimate, the right, because it doesn't mean that you will not be in harm's way here and you may be persecuted and all those things.
Yeah, but he'll give you the strength to go through it, or I don't know, might keep you away from it.
I'm just thinking about it. It may not be that protection may not be what we are thinking.
Is,
protection is like just keeping us safe.
Yeah.
It may be protection ultimately that we will.
The evil.
Yeah.
That we will
Could
be taken there, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's why we need to.
But even that, yes, for sure. But even situations here, he will either give you the strength or a way out, or I don't know how, but he will take you through the situation. He will not. It's only through the storm that he will be with you. Yeah, just like those disciples, as they were crossing, there was that storm, and Jesus was in the boat, but they still cried out to him and said, they didn't have to, but they still cried out, and he just rebuked the thing. So all I'm saying is, if Jesus is in the boat with you, you can be very sure that he will give you the strength to go through the storm. And so it's not that he'll keep you away from the storm, but he'll give you the strength and the grace to go through.
Consider it joy.
And you go through trials, yes. Okay, any questions till now? So it says, pray for those in political authority over you. Ask God to rule and overrule in their decisions so that good and justice prevail. Yeah, very true of what's happening in our country. We can ask God to rule and may his will be done. Okay, Joy, any questions? Good. Lena, do you have any questions? Okay, I'm stopping the recording. Okay, over to you, Geeta.
Any prayer and prayer requests?
I have a friend who has a thyroid cancer with surgery on 19. He's like 39.